What's up, baby blazers? It's Joshy this week, and stop staring at me like that. This week, I have my husband, Hunter Rollins, on this episode with me, and we're kind of just gonna be, just chit-chatting about life and seasons and church and how we functioned in it as maybe like how we did single and like how we did when we first got married and like I guess like now. Yeah, we're just gonna be talking about like burnout in the church. I think you made a really good point with it when we were talking about like possibly doing this topic of like how burnout is kind of like inevitable, you know? So, do you feel like when I think of like burnout in the church, I think about like our last season, like August to like November, where it was just like really like hard with church and just like certain things, and like we had just like taken so much on our plate for 2 years that we just like kind of hit a wall. But like I feel like before that, like before marriage, I never really experienced not like a crash out, but like burnout in the church like that. Like, would you say that you have?
I mean, my relationship with the church has always been kind of up and down and gone through its seasons. But I think this most recent one has been probably the first time I experienced specifically what I experienced, especially like you were saying, going through the seasons of like singleness and then being together and then being married. At least with the church, one thing that was interesting was you were there for that the whole time. So even though we weren't together or maybe not even have been friends, like my reintroduction to the church was essentially being reintroduced, or not reintroduced, but introduced to you. So I think that's kind of a unique thing, whereas a lot of people either come into the church already with their spouse or maybe meet their spouse somewhere else, or there's always some sort of or even
Like
if they are in or even
like,
if they are in the same church, they're in different I don't want to say cliques, but like organizations or volunteering in different spaces. But everything that I was doing, you were also doing. So that's probably a God thing, but that's a topic for another conversation. But this conversation specifically, and the reason that I brought that up is because I think it's interesting that you kind of got to see me through that, and vice versa. I got to see you through that as well. And when I say that we kind of saw it together, where like not only did we go to the same church, but we also volunteered in the exact same places. And that's not because we did it together. That's prior to us even
having a full conversation.
Yeah, or really even being friends. So that being the worship team, which is probably the biggest thing, and then B, students, and then kind of everything in between, because there's a lot of subsectors to those, whether it's
conferences.
Yeah, conferences. Like you can be on the worship team and not do the conferences or the holidays or whatever. You can be like, hey, I want to be the one that's only doing the casual Sundays, like right?
Once every 3 months.
Right, because like, although there probably shouldn't be, there is more pressure for the conferences and the 2 and 3 day events and stuff like that. And then you add the camps. Like a lot of youth leaders aren't going to camp, and there's some leaders that only do camp, and we were doing all of the above.
Yeah, we were doing everything.
We signed up for everything.
I think that's so interesting, like looking back, like, and I think for me, like knowing that I had never really experienced burnout in the church like before, and I feel like I've always had like my hands really like, I don't know, like my arms like elbow deep in the mud of church. So like I feel like I remember doing like drama like at my old church, like always on the worship team. I was like leading worship like for like the youth group, like which, like, when you're in, like, middle school or, like, in freshman year, I feel like you shouldn't be leading seniors, you know, like, all these things. And I feel like I've always been on a platform of influence in that way in the church. And then going to the new church, going to a new church and trying to figure out, like, where else I need to be plugged in and all, like, you know, whatever may have you. I don't know, I just feel like I've never experienced burnout until this year, or last year, I guess. And so it's such an interesting thing that, I don't know, we got married. I mean, we were, like you said, like, we were already involved in all these things, and then we got married, we got back from our honeymoon, and I feel like we just, like, jumped right into serving again. And it was like, I feel like anytime the doors of the, like, were open to the church, we were there. Anytime, like, I don't know, I feel like anytime there was something to serve at, we were there, which, like, it's like this, like, twofold in my brain, where I'm like, well, it's not a bad thing to serve, it's not a bad thing to, like, give your time and to give back to the community. But I think specifically our, like, second year of marriage, I feel like our marriage didn't suffer as in, like, our relationship, but I feel like our marriage suffered in, like, we were giving so much to other people and pouring out so hard to, like, students and the congregation and worship and all these things, that when it came time to, like, spiritually serving each other and loving each other as, like, husband and wife and as one, I feel like there were times that we just, like, suffered because we literally had nothing else to give.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's like a number of things, you know? Because, like, I know it's been said before, and it might be a cliche, but, like, you can't pour out if your cup's not full.
Right, if it's empty.
Right? So it's like, that's all we were doing, you know? And in that season, I would say that we were very blessed, lucky, whatever you want to call it, that, like, our cup was very full, you know? And maybe, like, in hindsight, we should have paced ourselves a little better. Been like, hey, like, maybe let's not be there every single time. Let's not say yes to everything. Let's not go from a worship conference to church camp on top of me trying to build a business, you struggling with your own things, whether that be your friendships, or you were also having a lot of, like, a mental fog as far as, like, what direction you wanted to go into your life. So these are, like, real world things that we're facing on top of, like, taking on all of these spiritual responsibilities, right? And not that spiritual responsibilities are a bad thing, but like
they are when they're used out of context, right?
Oh yeah.
And I think like that's, like, you don't agree with that. You kind of just sounded like you didn't agree.
It's not that I didn't agree, but what do you mean specifically by context?
Like, for me, context is, it's a good thing to use the talent in which God gave you. So, like, hospitality, that's a talent for me. Like, I feel like that is a gift that God's given me, where, like, I love to serve, I love to host, I love to have people over. And while I don't always have the social battery for it, I feel like opening up our home and always being a place where people can come and sit on our couch and just trauma dump, life dump, have fun, whatever, has always been, like, a gift of mine. And I feel like maybe, like, gift is a better word for that. And then talent is singing. Like, worship has always been a way for me to give back to God, because it's like, he's given me so much, why would I not sing praises to him? But I was abusing those things, right? So instead of being, like, getting on stage and being, like, and I'm not going to say, like, every single time I got on stage my heart wasn't there, but, like, I would say it was, like, 5 times out of 10 I would get on stage and just be like, gosh, Lord, please just help me get through today. And it's like, that's not the context in in which God wants you to be using those things, because he didn't give you it to just like nonchalantly move through life. He gives gifts and talents and all these things to be used, not just, well, one, really just for his glory, right? But two, in his glory, and in using those things for his glory, he brings people to repentance. Like, he brings people to the feet of Jesus. And like, whether that is through worship or being a mentor or just always being there, I feel like in the right context, they are done well. But we were doing so much that it was like I was giving 10% here and 10% here and 10% here, instead of having like a place where I can give 100% and then taking time and then giving 100% in the other place.
Yeah. And I don't think you always have to have 100%. Just because life do be crazy.
Right.
And that's probably not the most likely thing for all the time. But I would say for like towards the end of I would say we're at like 20% of our new season, right? Our last season, the season of Burnout that we're referring to, towards the end of it, I think we were operating in every scenario with between 10 to 15% of capacity. So, like, I know we only touched on the at-church things, but especially volunteering with students, there was a lot of, like, outside, whether that was attending, like, games or hosting sleepovers, or they need to call you to vent at 2 a.m. or they just want to come over and hang and like all of these things, like,
and we said yes to everything.
Yeah, and I freaking love these kids, dude.
Yeah, same.
So like I think there was a season where at least one of them was sleeping on our couch like every day for what felt like months.
5 months, I swear.
And so
and two, like we were like, I would say like, I mean, I would still say we're newly married. Like we haven't been married for you know, so like, and we were newly married still. So,
and you know, like that was the heat of me like establishing my business, and like there was just so many things going on that it got to a point where we were just like shutting down.
Yeah.
You know, getting up for church was a chore. You know, when one of the kids called me, it was a chore. You know, church, like seeing my name on the schedule on Planning Center was a chore. Like it was, yeah, right. It was like it got to a point where none of it was like I'm excited to do this. It was like I don't have the time. I don't have it in me. And so that was like a really hard thing or realization to come to, you know, because you always want to have it. Like you always want to be on top of your game. Yeah. And like being able to like, and maybe this isn't the right like way to put this, but for me the visualization is like literally like sitting at the feet of Jesus or laying it down at Jesus and being like,
bro, take it.
Yeah, but you feel like a failure, you know? You're like you sit down and you're like, I failed you, dude. Instead of being like, my cup's empty right now. Yeah. And like then shifting the mindset to like understanding that that's okay. Right. You know, there's a reason that there's a schedule and there's different people.
Right. I think it's like, for me, it's like two ways where it's like, one, I feel like the burnout really teaches me humility. Ouch. And not in like a like false humility way, right? Where I'm like, oh, like, I just know there's nothing left for me to give, so I've got to go to the feet of Jesus. You know, like it's not like some like false humility crap like that, but it was like literally realizing how empty my cup was me having to come to terms that like I literally cannot do this on my own. Like, there wasn't, I genuinely remember, like, when just so much was happening. Like, I want to say it was, like, October. I think you were gone on tour. And I think I was just, like, sitting in bed one night, and the house was so quiet. And I was missing you. And just so much junk was just happening, you know. And I remember sitting in bed, and I was just praying. And I was like, Lord, I can't go to church anymore. Like, I remember just being like literally being like, I can't go to church anymore. Like, I'm done. Like, and it wasn't like I was like done with the church, right? It wasn't like I was like actually tired of church or anything. It was that I was literally at my wit's end of serving. And it was literally because I didn't feel like I was being served back. And I think that's where, like, shout out Tyler Moore and even Justice Ward for, I feel like, being such good stewards in that. Because I remember Tyler, like, sitting with me and being like, dude, say no more. And I was like, dude, no, like, we love having those kids over, like, we love doing that stuff. And he was like, you don't have to say yes to everything. And he was like, if your first ministry is failing, which is your home, like, if your first ministry is failing, it's not worth it. And like months after I stepped down from students, because I was like, I have to say no. Like, you know, like, it was tormenting for me, because it then became a thing where I realized that if I stayed there any longer, I would be doing a disservice to those students, because it was like I was no longer giving them, like, what they deserved. And I think too, that was my own fault, because I feel like sometimes I put on this, like, persona and personality of, like, super bubbly and so outgoing and, like, being the life of the party and all these things. And I think I can keep up with that for a little bit, but, like, when it really, really, really gets down to the nitty gritty of, like, hanging out, like, I just want to, like, talk and chill and, like, you know, like, recharge. And because I was always having to be, like, Joshy, the girl who's super bubbly and, like, funny and all these things, I think I lost sight of how to actually be myself. Excuse me. And that kind of did a disservice in students, in our marriage, in worship, in my just, like, friendships and relationships. And, like, I don't know how I was, I don't even know, like, you know what I mean? I can't remember why I got on that tangent, but that burnout was, like, humbling. And again, it's not in a, like, glorified way. It's like, yeah, I just, like, was so humbled. It's just like, yeah, no, I was humbled. Like, it's humbling to come to the ends of yourself, you know? Like, having to actually see how human you are and be like, dang, like, I have to slow down. Like, I have to. And if I don't, like, I'm gonna hurt the people in my way. So you think burnout is inevitable? I think that's debatable.
Maybe inevitable is a pretty harsh word. I mean, I think if we do a better job at, for lack of a better word, pacing ourselves, like, it's less likely. But it also depends on, and it's also very dependent on the person. Like, at least for the season that we're in right now, we're gone all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, of course, it's going to be inevitable when we're gone over the week to come back home on the weekend when it's our only time in our house that we just freshly moved into, to also, like, be doing both service on the worship team and be there for the kids, or be the greeter, or be the whatever. Like that's a hard season. Or not season. We've been seeing season a lot. Season this, season that. But, like, that's a hard, like, you can only do that for so long before.
So what's the balance in that? Is that, like, not traveling as much? Because being in a church and a part of a church is super important, because that's how you get poured into.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like we travel for our jobs.
Yeah.
So it's like, what is the balance in that? And, like, how do we find ways to not I don't know. To me, like, when I think of the burnouts that we experienced, to me, a burnout comes with no boundaries. And so it's like...
I'm the worst about boundaries, too.
Yeah.
I have no boundaries.
I know. And so, like, when I think of how fast we hit that burnout, like, I swear it was like one day we were just good, and the next day it was like, we're done. I'm not doing this, you know? And, like, obviously it wasn't that extreme, but when I think of a burnout, I think it's because of a lack of boundaries. And I feel like that's in anything, like in a job, like in a workforce, you know, like that's with friendships. Like you get burnt out of friendships because of a lack of boundaries. You get burnt out of your job because of a lack of boundaries. You get burnt out of school because of lack of boundaries. And like, you know, obviously there's other things that go into it with like the quality of things or whatever. But to me, our boundaries were non-existent. And so the burnout was easy to hit, right? The burnout in the church was it was inevitable in that way, because it's like, how would we have combat against burnout when like we literally were just letting whatever happen? So,
I don't know. I feel like it's definitely still, like we're obviously still learning. I don't know.
And it'll be different.
I would say that we're just now. I would say that the burnout happened. We're probably coming up on
a year.
Yeah, probably.
Of the beginning of it.
Probably like a year of at least starting the phases of like stepping back. And I feel like we're just now like starting to dip our toes, you know, back in the water and again. And we've been doing like, although we haven't been directly inside the church, I feel like we've been doing a lot of things around.
Really?
Like, or maybe, I don't know if a lot's fair, but I still feel like we're investing in people and the communities around us. And so, like, even though that, like, we're out on the road, like, those conversations haven't stopped, you know? And I, you know, if your people don't know, like, being out on the road for us is super secular and a super worldly environment. And we're known as, or at least have a reputation for being the, like, Jesus people.
Right.
You know?
Or just being, like, the clean-cut people.
Right.
Because I feel like I don't really make it a point to be like, I'm a Jesus freak. You know? But it's, like, it's become a known thing. And I think there's been, like, a twofold to even that of, like, seeing some scrutiny, but also, like, having the curiosity behind it. And I think even I think that's another place where, like, I think when people look into our lives, it looks like we just completely dipped out on Jesus. And it's like, a part of me, this is like not even the burnout conversation, but a part of me like wishes people could see the stuff that like we deal with as we work in a secular environment. And it's like no shot to the people we work with, because they're freaking amazing. Like, I would say they're some of the greatest non-believers, quote unquote, that I've ever met in my life. But there is still that boundary that we have to maintain. Like, I thought it was so interesting that the project manager was like, so Hunter, like, you don't cuss or whatever. And I thought that was just such an interesting thing for him to point out, because it was a noticeable difference that you did not look like everyone else in the room. And I think
there was like an ongoing joke because I opened a box while we were like packing up or whatever, and there was a Mountain Dew. And I got excited and I went, a freaking Mountain Dew, dude? And so for the rest of the trip, all of the dudes were like, a freaking Mountain Dew, dude? A freaking Mountain Dew? Because, you know, obviously for them it would like,
they would have just
said the F or do whatever, but it wasn't like, you know, they didn't make it in a way where it was like
condemning.
Right. They just thought it was funny because they know that that's me.
You.
Yeah, right? So
right. I feel like I don't know, I feel like there's like this, I want to know, like, how can we avoid burnout, and how can we like tell people what are ways to avoid burnout? So one is boundaries. So what does that look like? Like, say that you're, I don't know, like, what are ways that people get burnout in the church? It's like over serving, or
I feel like it's so objective, you know.
You mean subjective?
Is that right? I can't remember
Objective
which.
is like truth, and subjective is like
Just
opinion.
up to opinion. See, but I thought objective opinion. Whatever. Anyways, okay. I think it's subjective.
Subjective is like
and it's
silly.
dependent on the person. You know, like if I was just working a normal 9 to 5, and I got to clock out at 5 o'clock, and the rest of my evening was mentally available, I would have a lot more on a regular basis.
But you think, because if you I feel like too, there's also something really mentally draining about having the same routine every single day. And I feel like for
I agree with that.
some people who have 9 to 5s, you're giving so much mentally and emotionally to a job that might barely pay your bills, and then you're going home, and some people are going home to like 2-3 children, and like imagine if we were in the situation that we're in, living in boxes right now, our kitchen is not even unloaded. We haven't had a home cooked meal in almost 3 months. We have no dining room table because all of our boxes are everywhere. The only open space we have is your office upstairs. And imagine working a 9 to 5 and coming back home to this and 3 kids running around. That's exhausting.
Yeah, I don't know, dude.
And there's no clocking out. Like, I feel like we had a burnout, and there were a lot of things that like definitely played into that burnout, and just a lot of people and situations. But I could not imagine stacking that on top of a regular 9 to 5, because at that time I had went part-time, so I wasn't doing as much. I was starting with Nappy Boy, so my hands weren't in as deep, you know, and I hadn't even started cleaning. I still had school, but like my hands weren't, you know, like our hands weren't as tied. You were traveling, which is mentally exhausting, and you were constantly like, you were away for a while, so that's exhausting. But it's like we had different days every single day. So like, you know what I mean? Like, what is an objective way that burnout can be managed? Because obviously, while I don't think it's inevitable, I definitely think there are levels of burnout. I feel like we experienced the most extreme because we literally took a step back. Like, the biggest step back I've ever taken in my entire life being a Christian. But I feel like there's also micro doses that people should be able to take step backs, you know? Like, people should be able to just, like, not just attend, but, like, just be poured into.
I think that's a good point. You know, sometimes you have to take that. Sometimes you have to take that step back to fill yourself back up. You know, and let yourself be poured into. Because if you pour everything out, like,
yeah, I mean, it's like Justice always says, like, you get poured into to pour out. Like, that's what we're supposed to do. But you have to get poured into first, and like that can come from the Lord. Obviously, like, he gives a double portion, like that's what we're told. But I feel like there's also this aspect of like, at the time, and I still think to this day, like, there's no like Bible study group that caters to like newlyweds that were in our age range. There were people that were, it was like young with kids, and we're not having kids anytime soon. So it's like, it doesn't cater to us. Or it's like married for 30 years or like 60 years old, or it was like college and single, you know, like it was like there was no place for us to go together as a married couple and get filled up. So it was like, literally, we were pouring out and pouring out and pouring out and pouring out, but we didn't even have a Bible study, whether that was just like separate or even together as a couple, you know? So it's like,
Yeah, we really didn't have.
community. I mean, we
No.
still.
Yeah, really. We had, Justice and Jordan.
Yeah.
That I would say was our biggest.
Absolutely.
But it was also a little bit different for us and them at the time as well, because it wasn't community as much as they were really mentors. And so it was like a weird blurred line of us going to them for advice,
Yeah.
but also like finding community and solace in them as well. Yeah. And then other than that, it was more just like us hanging out with like-minded individuals.
Yeah.
Like one of my students that had graduated on, like him and his girlfriend, like we ended up getting close to, and stuff like that, which is good, but it's not like
they're not married.
Well, but it just in general, it's not the community and the life cycles that we're in, which unfortunately, because of our whatever employment, or I don't want to say lifestyle, but the way that we operate, I don't know how many people are gonna actually be able to relate to that. But at least, at minimum, like a similar age and single. Yeah. Somebody that understands. But we also have super weird hobbies. So it's like anytime we do find that, we don't really jive
at all
as just people, like, because we find them and we're like, oh, that was cool. And it was cool to have like spiritual conversations or whatever, but like I'm not gonna hang out with this person.
Yeah, which is so unfortunate.
And so to like in 100% truth, I don't know, like I don't think we've, or at least I haven't found it yet, and I'm looking for it. But I think that's where my heart is right now, and I don't know if it's right, but it's just honest, is that I'm taking it slow, and I'm trusting in the Lord's guidance and His direction, and I'm like, and I'm trusting the nudges, the spiritual nudges, like, hey, you should like reach out to this person, or hey, maybe pay a little bit extra attention to the sermon today. And stuff like that. And through that, and like truly letting Him guide me, I feel like I'm slowly falling into place. And so the truth is I'm just in the thick of it right now.
Really?
Yeah. And not in a bad way, in a good way, where it's like I'm just seeing it through and trying my best to understand what it all means. Because what I do know is I feel better right now than I did at the end of the last season. So with this direction that we're headed, like, where do we end up?
Ministry should come with cutting our flesh. Like, ministry should come with getting rid of ourselves and like how we feel, or how we function, or what's most comfortable to us. So it's like, while this past season with traveling and everything has been comfortable, a part of me, and this is just my own perspective and feelings, a part of me feels like it's not enough. Like, something's missing. And like, I'm not just saying like attending Sunday church service and getting a sermon. I'm saying like, not serving is not being a part of the church, because in order to be a part of the church, and not just the building, to be a part of the church is to be united with the church. It's to be one under the head of Christ in a unified body. And in order to do that, we have to play our function. If you're an eye and I'm an ear, then we got to play that role. But we can't both be eyes. We can't both be ears. We can't both be elbows. That's what Paul says in 1 Corinthians. And so it's like, is there there's always a rebound after the burnout, right? Like in my head, you're not just going to stay burnt out. Like there's going to be a rebound. There's going to be an upbringing, a new wine, whatever you may call it. So it's like for this season, we may have just went through a winter, but now we're coming up on a spring. So what are we going to do with what blossoms? We still haven't given like any solution. And I know that like
I didn't come into this anticipating giving a solution.
I know, but for me, I'm just like a fixer.
Like for me, when you asked me to be a part of this, I told you like.
No, I don't think that's a bad thing, but for me, it's like, what are you gonna do to equip that? You know, like what in hindsight is now 2020. What could we have done better to keep from getting burnt out, and what can we share with others that we wish we would have done? Or do you not regret the burnout?
I don't regret the burnout. Well, maybe that's not right. Yeah,
I know you lying boy.
Maybe I wish it wouldn't have gotten to the point that it had.
Yeah,
but I don't.
So, like,
I don't regret anything we went through in that season.
I don't regret the experience that we had, but I definitely wish it wouldn't have gotten to the extent too. So it's like, what do you think were things that...
It's like Tyler one time told us when we had a student that was going through some relationship issues and was calling us and reaching out to us all the time. We were doing our best to be there for him, but then he would
ghost us,
not listen to us, and it was just an interesting dynamic, and that was kind of tiresome in and of itself because we were investing a lot of time, and then they would just not use any of
they just wanted to
what
rant.
we took the time to invest in.
Right.
And so Tyler was like, look, like if your phone rings past 7:30, you don't need to answer it. Like you don't.
And then the 2:30 call in the morning came and we answered.
Reach out to them the next day. And like at the time I was like, I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. Like I love being there for them, and I want them to know that they can call me at all hours of the night. But in hindsight, maybe Tyler was on to something, you know?
Right.
And so sometimes it's just minuscule stuff like that where it's important to set boundaries and realize, like, if I get on this path now, this is where I will end up later. Yeah. You know, or maybe like if you're already like, if it's been like a month of exhaustion or whatever, like, hey, if they want you to play 3 services on Easter, like maybe it's okay, as much as you want to do it, to be like, I don't have the capacity. I just really don't have it this year, you know? Yeah. But like, hey, like I'm down to do 4th of July or I don't know. I'm just saying.
Never done a 4th of July.
I'm just saying 4th of July is just the next holiday coming up.
Was so like out of the realm of things I thought you were gonna say.
But like,
I thought if anything you were gonna be like Christmas.
Well,
dude literally said
because I was thinking of holidays between Easter or after Easter.
Memorial Day.
I'll do Memorial Day. I don't know.
That was funny.
It's too late. It's midnight right now.
It's so late.
But you get the idea.
I do. Yeah, I do.
You get the idea of like maybe. So
just literally setting boundaries. Like we could have just set boundaries.
Setting boundaries, and Justice and Tyler are probably both gonna laugh at us because they're gonna be like, "Bro, we told you this is how you avoid burnout." They
really did. Like they were looking out for us. I think it was one of those things that I feel like we were in such a, I don't know, such a position to be utilized that we like loved being the
I was just about to say that.
Excuse
Like,
me.
we really were like, we were in the thick of it, and we were like on a high.
Yeah, we were like, yeah, like we're
Of, like,
there. We love these kids.
of
And,
like
we're giving
life,
it everything.
Jesus, community, the world. Like, we were in just like a good spot.
Yeah.
And then we quickly were like, oh snap,
We've
we
given
can't breathe,
way too
dude.
much. Yeah.
So yeah, probably like we might be overcomplicating it, and the solution is just boundaries for everybody, because boundaries can also look different for every person.
Everybody, yeah.
So like you set as much or as little as you need to, and then you operate within those means.
Yeah.
And maybe that this season of me like coasting and listen to the Lord is just really just figuring out what that looks like, and like what is my boundaries and what capacity do I have, and how much of that needs to be filling up and or being filled up, and how much of that is the ability to pour out. And the truth is I don't know right now. I think maybe I'm not in the thick of winter, but like I do feel like I'm approaching spring, but I'm definitely still.
You're still hibernating. For sure.
Yeah, you know, I'm in the stage of just like rolling over, you know.
Yeah.
Here and there.
Yeah. I'm definitely like, I like realized it today. I was like cruising with the like windows down in the Jeep, and I was just like singing like What a God, because we're singing, or we're playing it, you can listen to that because the drums are crazy on it. We're playing it in 2 weeks, and I was just singing the bridge, you know, like, if the highest place I reach is at your feet, then I've seen it all. If the best thing that I see, or no, maybe it's, if the highest place I reach is at your feet, then I've done it all. If the best thing that I've seen is your glory, then I've seen it all. Your love has changed my life, forever satisfied, God, you are my everything. And if one word's all you speak, it's like I'm really messing up those lyrics, but if one word's all you speak, then I've heard it all. I don't know, really, really, really good bridge. Like, most people know the song, and if you know the song, like, you know the lyrics, but it was like a really powerful like bridge, and I was just like belting it, and I just remember like in my head like thinking, Lord, I finally feel like how I felt at 17, like when I knew that me and God were like this, and I knew that like my life stop looking at me like that. I knew that my life was not like, I don't want to say like in shambles, because our life wasn't in shambles, but it was like I didn't feel so scattered. Like, I finally feel like a chapter's closing at work. I know what the next year of school holds. I know what the next like few months of Nappy Boy holds. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know, as a type A person, I know the plan. And if it changes, I know that there's comfort in what's going to change. Like, I've gotten to a point where like, Lord, I'm no longer screaming at you asking, why do I not feel valued in a place where other Christians are? I now find comfort in the fact that like the only value I need is in Christ and in my husband. And so it's like, now I'm like, okay, Lord, I get it. I lost sight of where my value was being put. And I think like literally when I say that I don't want to put you in that with me and like lump you in there, but like I was so grateful to be utilized that I almost was like, instead of being used as a tool to do good, it was like I almost became like weaponized to do bad. And so like because I remember like there came a point where all the good we were doing, because it became a chore, it became literally like soaking up death, where it was like, God, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep doing this. And I literally think for like a hot second, I was so angry at God, because I was just like, I wasn't even angry at God. I was just angry with God, because I was like, how did you like lead us into this? And it wasn't his fault, right? Like, it was our fault for blindly saying yes and not creating boundaries. But it was like, now I'm like, I'm no longer, what's that verse? It says like, if I were a servant to men, then I would no longer be like a servant to Christ, or like if I aim to please men, then I'm no longer a servant to Christ. And I seriously, like, hindsight, and this is me just verbally processing it, I could totally not agree with this in a week, but like me thinking off the dome now, I'm just like, maybe I was so influenced by what my students thought of me, by what I looked like worship leading, and not like physically like what I looked like, but like worship has always looked like one way for me at this church. How do I continue to keep up with that image? And I think like my burnout was, I can no longer conform to what y'all have set out for me. Like, I have to be renewed by the Lord.
It's good.
You're tired?
I'm pretty beat.
I'm tired too. So
Yeah.
Boundaries. Burnout, inevitable. Bound to happen with no boundaries.
That's good.
That's a good.
That's word.
Yeah.
Justice would
You run around. Yeah, burnout is bound to happen with no boundaries. Yeah, I'm out. I gotta go to sleep.